I do feel badly for him. He served the country. He was a general. But just remember, he was approved by the Obama administration at the highest level. And when they say we didn't vet, well, Obama, I guess, didn't vet, because he was approved at the highest level of security by the Obama administration. So when he came into our administration for a short period of time, he came in, he was already approved by the Obama administration, and he had years left on that approval.
Donald Trump echoing his press secretary on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, saying the Obama White House should have vetted him better, I guess, besides firing him. Questions about Flynn continue to plague the Trump White House. He's at the center of several investigations into a $45,000 payment from RT, the Kremlin-financed cable TV news channel. Nayyera, Tim, and John are still with me. And John Dean, would it have made any sense to you if, let's say, during the Nixon administration, an official was said to have should have been vetted by the Lyndon Johnson administration, and that they could have just picked them up wholesale and added them to the Nixon White House? Would that have made sense?
None at all. None at all. In fact, that's not really the way it works. We inherited many people, and they were re-vetted, particularly for cabinet posts and what have you, in a very thorough new investigation. You've got to remember, FBI background investigations are very narrow, very thin. They really just look at the people who come up on the application and talk to them. They don't go in depth, excepting when you're at the White House level and do a vetting. You go much deeper, and typically somebody, particularly like a national security advisor, you don't rely on old background investigations. So that's really just weak on the Trump part.
And Tim, especially because this is somebody who was fired as head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. I mean, all of the reporting on General Michael Flynn is that he was, most of his career, a very respected, military man, a very respected intellect within the defense community. But then he was fired. Wouldn't that have raised red flags before one would make him their national security advisor?
For a lot of people, up until and during his time as the head of the DIA, he was considered one of the most promising officers of his entire generation of intelligence officers. Deeply, deeply respected. Now, leaving the DIA doesn't make you suddenly suspect, but traveling to Russia, not saying that you're accepting payments from a body that obviously has ties to the Russian government, that's what makes you suspect.
Yeah, and
that's what makes you suspect.
And what we were hearing also is the fact that he left very angry. Suddenly, he's saying that he was the first sort of American intelligence or military official let into the inner sanctum of the GRU. He's speaking, sitting at Vladimir Putin's table at an RT dinner with Jill Stein and others. You know, these sort of activities should have raised red flags, one would think. And then he's doing business with foreign governments. The idea that he should have been his previous vet before he was fired in 2014 is what should stand. It seems absurd, I think, to most people.
Well, it is, and actually that's not how it works. When you leave, your security clearance doesn't naturally carry over into the private sector, right? Even if you do get an extension for retired military, it's for 2 years with a bit of a reinvestigation. And during that period, we already know that the Pentagon warned him not to do some of these engagements. He did not have approval to do these. So especially as he's being considered in August of 2016, if that 2 years had expired, that's well in the middle of the campaign. Should have launched another investigation quite in detail. FBI, CIA, and DOJ get involved for that high of a level. So for him to not disclose his engagements, and for, as we now understand, the White House to not have done a deeper dive into his activities, shows that either there are people in the White House who are not qualified to be in these positions of seeing intelligence, or they're giving intelligence to people who blatantly have been engaged with as foreign agents with foreign countries.
Yeah, and we do know also that Sally Yates, who was the acting attorney general, actually went to the White House in January or in February and said, listen, there's something going on here. There's something wrong with this person.
And it's not just Flynn. This is a pattern of folks who are in senior, like a couple feet away from the president, who do not have the proper security clearances, so they cannot actually be doing national security work. Seb Gorka is another example. I mean, this is a guy who has Nazi ties and sits in the White House right now, is supposedly working on counterterrorism issues, but does not have the appropriate clearances and has raised flags for people.
So let's talk about the Attorney General of the United States, John Dean. I want to ask you, because this is another unusual situation among many unusual situations for this White House, one in which their Attorney General had to recuse himself from the investigations into Russiagate because he himself had meetings with Sergei Kislyak, the ambassador from Russia. Let's take a listen to Sessions on the Today Show with Matt Lauer talking about his role in an investigation of Michael Flynn.
You've already recused yourself from investigations involving any coordination between Trump associates and Russian officials. Does that recusal extend to this area, to General Flynn?
Well, my recusal deals with the campaign issues, but I would expect not to be involved in this one.
You would recuse yourself from any decision dealing with General Flynn?
But I don't, yeah, and I really don't know whether there's an investigation or should be, and we don't confirm investigations of, in the Department of Justice.
And John Dean, can you just give us some historical perspective here on how unusual it is for a sitting Attorney General of the United States to have to walk away from an investigation of this nature and this magnitude?
Well, we haven't had many investigations of this nature or magnitude. What happened during Watergate is the Attorney General didn't announce his recusal, but for all practical matters, Dick Kleindienst, who had been appointed Attorney General by his predecessor, John Mitchell, because Mitchell was at the outset a suspect in Watergate, he just stayed away from it and turned it all over to the head of the criminal division to run the investigation. That's not unusual either. Reporting up typically to the Deputy Attorney General. In this instance, we have a former prosecutor who's going to be Deputy Attorney General, and that's probably to the advantage of a thorough investigation. He's not likely to be very corruptible and to probably make a very hard, honest decision on some of these criminal prosecutions that may come along.
Yeah, drip, drip, drip. It's just going to keep going for this White House. Thank you, Nayyera Haq, Tim Mack, and John Dean. Thank you all.